Welcome to part 1 of working on this fursuit head. This is going to be a pre-made that is going to be a cute little gecko creature, and they will be for sale at FWA this year. I wanted to do this just as a fun little time lapse to show you guys the process of making a fursuit head rather than doing a full in-depth tutorial, since I know there's a lot of those available on YouTube already. So this is more of just a fun little time lapse of me working on this head, and I'll chime in from time to time with what I'm doing working on it. Right here I am just carving out the head base and making it so that a face can fit into it. And right here I cut my finger a little bit. Make sure you're careful when you're using razor blades. They can be really sharp and very easily cut yourself without realizing it. Right now I'm just finishing up cutting it, making sure it can fit a face, and then I will move on to doing the liner. We didn't show patterning the liner for this head base in this video, simply because we already had the pattern made, and it's a standard pattern used on every base that is this cast. So here I am just tracing out the different parts of it, and they're labeled, and here I am just cutting it out. And for the back of the head, we also have a standard pattern that we use. So that is the same for every head base, which makes it nice since they are adjustable and we don't have to worry about making it too small or too big since it can be adjusted. So now I'm just working on sewing the liner, and I start with the tubes of neoprene that will go around the eyes to give it a little bit of a depth so we can easier glue it into the head. And I don't actually pin anything when I make liners, however I do highly recommend that you do if you do not have a lot of experience on a sewing machine. I've made so many of these that I don't need to pin them anymore, but it is always still a good practice to do to prevent messing up or misshapen seams or anything like that. Here I am just adding a layer of mesh, and we use this when we glue it down to give it more of a support. And then here I'm just adding the mouth liners. And now we're moving on to gluing the liner, and here I'm starting out at the nose bridge, just using my hands to kind of hold it there and use some pins to keep it tight against the front of the head. And then I'll move on to the eye sockets. And I use an eye blank to kind of help the base keep its shape while that glue is drying in place. And we just move around the head, do the same on the other side. And I like to load it up with a lot of hot glue just to make sure it sticks in place very well and doesn't get messed up by sweat or getting hot or anything like that. And I ran out of glue, so I had to get some more sticks, and then I start going around the edge of where this mesh is. And what this mesh does is it just gives the base a little bit more support for that liner to stick to, so instead of it only being on the inside, it's also glued a little bit to the outside. And I'm just trimming up the foam a little bit to make it a little easier to fit. And then that's it for the base, except for the mouth liner. We glue that in, and I just kind of work it over and over and over, making sure that it's nice and smooth. Do the same for the top, and then you also need to glue around the edge of the eyes. And here we're going around the edge of the eye, just using some pins to hold that neoprene in place as I go. This is completely optional. You can easily just not do a step like this, but we like to do it. We feel it gives it a little bit more support for the eyes. And this is also not meant to be a full tutorial. This is just showing our process, not really going in depth on how to do it. Just a basic general explanation to kind of share how we do what we do. Since not everyone does it the same, and it's fun just to kind of show and teach each other about how different makers do these heads. And so now I'm working on adding the ears and making this base ready to fur. So I'm just adding this layer of foam around the edge of the head base to give the ears more structure and support to sit on. And then you'll see me going around the edge and trimming it and pinning it as I go. And I will then also make the ear pattern. This is a little gecko creature, and even though geckos don't normally have ears, I thought it would be absolutely adorable to just give him some little weird wonky ears that I would just make super duper fluffy when I fur him. And you'll see me here finally gotten that ear shape down and going to trace it out on the foam, and also tracing out the little extra bits that make it a little bit more 3D as well. And I don't glue these onto the head just yet. I will just pin them in place so that I know where they go while I'm patterning, and they won't get glued on until the rest of the head's actually ready to fur as well. And now we're on to taping, so I'm going to start going around the eyes, and this is just to make sure I get the eye sockets nice and tightly taped, and then I'll go around the rest of the muzzle. And when I'm doing this, I like to make sure that I get the tape as tight as I can get it without misshaping the base itself, and that just ensures that it's a nice tight fit when you do the fur as well. I also don't add seam allowance when I cut the fur out either. But you'll see that I have an insert in the mouth, and that is because I like to keep the mouth a little bit more open than what I want it to be on the final head. I find that just helps keep it open a little bit better than just patterning it with it lax. And I'm just going on and on and on with this tape, and you can see my little kitty cat back in the background checking things out too. She likes to cause chaos sometimes. And so now we are finally to pattern marking. So this guy has actually some pretty crazy stripes and some pretty complex markings here. So he was a little bit more complicated than most of the pre-mades that I will be having at FWA. But I am very excited to be making him, and I really hope you guys also enjoy him. I think he's super cool looking, and he's going to be super fun to do as well. And now we're on the last part of this video, which is cutting out the tape and also the fur. So first I'm just starting with getting the pattern cut off of the base itself. And I I'm helping my assistant here fixing that paw liner pattern. She's working on some paws in the background for this pre-made actually. And we're just going to go around and we're going to cut out each of the pieces, labeling it as we go to make sure that we know where they go when we go back to sewing on the fur. And now we're on to the final part, which is cutting out these pieces of fur. So I'm starting out with the parts that don't get shaved, and I'm just kind of puzzle piecing them all together to take up as much space as I can on the fur without wasting too much of it. And this is a blue fox fur, which I got from overseas. And now I'm doing the shaved pieces. Now we're moving on to the beige, and doing the same again, just separating the shaved versus the not shaved pieces to try and save as much fur as possible. And now I'm about to start working on the cheek fluff, trying to figure out the shape for that. And then we'll go back to cutting out fur. And after we cut out all of this fur, I will also be doing a very quick rough shave on it. So as this video wraps up here, I just want to say everyone thank you for watching, and please keep an eye out for the next part, which will be cutting and sewing and gluing this head.